alcoholic. I identify as an alcoholic. Hi, everyone. The very first meeting I ever came to was in this room. Very different chairs, very different coffee setup. But otherwise, it's the same, and I kind of love it. It was 8. I'm Stephanie Roberts. I have 13 years sober. My sober date is October 11th, 2010, so almost 13 years. I have done a lot of service. Yeah, I qualify to be here. I qualify to be here for like 25 years of drinking that almost killed me, not the alcohol necessarily itself, though that I'm sure might have. But for some of the choices I made, the quote-unquote shameful choices I made that were actually not shameful at all. Very dangerous, but not shameful. I want to start out, I always get a little bit nervous because I don't plan anything. I mean, I have a story, experience, strength, and hope, what happened, what it's like now. I can do that. I mean, anybody can do that, right? You can just be kind of like, here it is. But like what's happened in the last year for me or year and a half was, because life happens when you're sober, no matter how many years, no matter what. It's not all, Skittles and blowjobs, as our dear friend Bob used to say. It's not, I'm just quoting someone. I'll try not to. I mean, isn't that better? Yeah. So last year, summer of 2020, I was suicidal, and I told no one. And it was the first time in my life I'd been really suicidal. Like, at the end of my drinking, I say in my story often that I was lying in bed and I just wanted to die, and I was thinking about committing suicide, and instead I picked up the phone. This was different. There was no drinking. I'm well medicated for my anxiety. I spent 2 years sober without medication, and it was hard for me. I have other mental illnesses and other traumas at the root of a lot of this that also needed to be addressed, but would never be addressed if I hadn't gotten sober, right? So I'm properly medicated, but it just hit me. And everybody afterwards says, why didn't you tell me? Because that's not how it works. Like, my whole life I've spent disassociated from the real me, right? I had some trauma in my childhood where I was entirely a victim. And from that point on, along with a charismatic, narcissistic mother, and also a little bit abusive. So I learned young to create another personality. I just had a second me. And that second me is the one who went out into the world. And that second me was the one who smiled and talked and loved everybody, could throw a great cocktail party, even when she's not drinking. I mean, she's fabulous, honestly. Like, when I want to bring her out and I choose to bring her out, she's fantastic. But so she was on. She was on when that was happening. She was on, and I was back here, and I was inside, and I was breaking and breaking and breaking. And I think back to just a year and a half ago, and I think, A, if I weren't sober, I'd be dead. B, if I didn't have other tools that sobriety and AA had given me and told me were okay to use, I'd be dead. And I guess biologically, just the desire to live, which I never thought I had. I thought that was like I was born without, I'm not a mammal. Like, there's something wrong with me. And that sort of came out, and I couldn't tell my husband. I told no one. But I knew I needed something, and I found a psychologist and a new psychiatrist. And I've been on Lexapro since the second year of my sobriety, which is what solved a huge amount of my anxiety and depression. But I needed something more, so I found another psychiatrist. I take things as directed. Thankfully, I don't need to be medicated with anything addictive. But if a doctor said the only way you're going to not commit suicide and you're going to live is to take this, I would just take as directed. So they put me on Wellbutrin, and I went through a very intense last year and a half of therapy, psychotherapy, 3 days a week at first, coming down when I didn't want to kill myself anymore. That's 13, 12, whatever it is, I don't know, 12 years into sobriety, 11 years into sobriety. That's real. I'm tired of hearing people say it's all fantastic all the time. It gets hard. And not all the time can an AA meeting fix what's going on for me, right? So essentially in this 11th year breakdown, I went to a psychologist and did the psychotherapy. That was an in-depth fourth step. When I did my fourth step when I came in, you only know what you know. You know what I mean? Like, you don't know yet the deepness of the things and the reasons or the mental health or whatever. Maybe we don't call them reasons, but whatever your damages, I hate the word defects, especially for women who have struggled so much with already believing they are defective in so many ways. But I think anybody can feel this way, certainly, but as a woman, I understand that women feel this way. So when I work with sponsees, I like to say damages instead of defects. And I think anybody can do that, obviously, not just women. But the idea that our defects, our damages, these were things we built up to stay alive, right? My second me, that's a damage. I was damaged, and she became a thing. Does she serve me now? I mean, last year, yes, she did. She got me through the year, but did she? You know, if not for her, if not having learned to do that, might I have opened up? So for me, the idea of defects is more like, damages isn't the best word either, but it's just like you built up these things to live, to survive. One of them was alcohol. If you're anything like me, alcohol saved your life before it started killing you. And it made you feel like you could be a human in the world before it stopped doing that and started making you feel ashamed, self-loathing, whatever it did for you, angry, hateful. So that's probably a segue to my story. I grew up in New York City. I was adopted in 1978. I have met the most adopted people in my life in AA. So I don't know if there's something to somatic trauma and, that sort of like, and in the 70s, it was very different. You went like to a foster, there was no bonding. No, I never bonded to anyone. And I therefore never had feelings for anyone in my family. So I grew up here and I was a kid of the 80s and the 90s. So if you think New York's bad now, I won't say the word, but it's not. It was rough. And I had this very privileged life. I had a very privileged family who had adopted me. And I lived on Sutton Place. Oh, poor Stephanie, in a big apartment. Poor Stephanie. And I went to an all-girls school on the Upper East Side called Nightingale. And we went to Southampton in the summers. My father had built a little house there in the 60s. With our little station wagon, we'd go. And we belonged to a beach club that I was very uncomfortable in, and I hated all of it. I didn't fit. And at the time, I felt like I didn't fit because in my view, right, it's like, first of all, I thought everybody on the Upper East Side looked like Gwyneth Paltrow. But it's like I really thought that, dysmorphic. I was like, I would have put that on all of you. You're like, that's great. You could do that. You could do that for me. But it made me feel little and, brown-haired, and now I dye it. But that's because the gray, really, it's coming in badly. I felt little and I felt brunette, and I didn't feel any of the things these other people seemed so confident. And I never bothered to go further with any of them because I was so intimidated by the outsides. I didn't like my beach club in Southampton. Again, everybody was named Bo and Blair, and, they were blonde and beautiful and so much richer than I was. I don't want to deny my privilege for even a minute, but they were whoo. I remember lying once. My friend Jessica was coming over for dinner, and she was super mega wealthy, but also one of the humblest, kindest people I've ever known. And she was coming over, and so I set the table with all our best, I was 10, with all our best china and crystal, and and told her when she came over that the maid had said it in advance. So, you know, that's a perfect example of how I felt different and less than. And then, you know, that changes pretty rapidly. The minute you find something to ease that. So my mother had also been like a food terrorist. Like because, you know, I'm little and brown and round, and I was a little chubby and brown. And, you know, I mean, I was the brownest there was at that point in my school and at that club. And, you know, I knew it. Like, somehow I knew it. I knew that the environments I was in were not equal and were not okay to be in and were not okay to associate with. But in any case, so Jill, that's my mother, is a food terrorist, and like I get kicked under the table if I eat too much, and I'm only allowed to eat this and that. And she had a woman at the beach club follow me around to see if I ate ice cream or French fries from the snack bar, and then the woman would tell on me at the end. I mean, this is like, it's funny now, but it's also like not funny. It's really effed up. Like, to make a child feel, and you are making a child feel. It's a child. It's like, you can't make me feel anything now, but a mom can kind of make you feel something at 8 or 9, and she made me feel like I wasn't good enough, pretty enough, anything. So, you know, I found food. I mean, what am I going to rebel with? And what am I going to soothe with? Oh, hell yeah, I'm going to steal money, and I'm going to buy food, and I'm going to binge in my room every single day, because both my parents are working full-time, sort of. My dad's much older. My mother has taken him hostage into her catering business. He's the only one I kind of liked, and so I've got no one around. I'm 8, 9 years old. I'm already being left alone. I travel to and from school alone. I have a lot of time to eat. So I ate. I had all the candies and all the things I wasn't allowed. There was a place called $1 Million Deli on Madison Avenue right near my school. And I would go in there and I'd like buy all the things. And then I'd go home and I'd eat all the things. And that was my first drug. You know, I know that we stick to alcohol, and alcohol replaced that very quickly. But so that was my first drug. And it soothed me, and you get that really full feeling, that really full where you want to die. You know, some people purge. I didn't have that ability in me. I wouldn't wish the purging on anyone. I think that does a second layer of damage that I can't imagine. But that's so full that I can't feel anything but the fullness, right? That there's nothing else. So I'm everything is obliterated by that fullness. And then as soon as it starts to go, fill it up again. So that binge eating very seriously goes throughout my story. High school, I don't fit in at Nightingale. I don't feel like I do. I don't bother to try either. I find some kids who used to sell drugs outside of Nightingale, who lived uptown, and I loved them, and they seemed like my people. So I started hanging out with them, made my way uptown. One of my best friends, actually from Nightingale, she and I both had scholarships there, lived at Lenox Terrace. If you're watching The Godfather of Harlem, you might see it in its origins, if you're not old like me. But otherwise, it had become not nearly as nice as it was meant to be in its origins. She lived there, and I hung out there. And I drank 40s of Old E, and we had a brown bagged, and I smoked blunts, and there was something called Cisco that was like, okay, I mean, the older people know. I don't know, you guys have something now similar. Like, I just saw in this store, like, a cinnamon, like, I was just like, even if I drank, that would not be okay. Yeah, I don't know, so vile. But it's like the cheapest wine. Every generation has had this, like, incredibly cheap, we called it liquid crack at the time. And it kind of was. It, like, took you right over that edge, like adding Red Bull to vodka. So I fit in up there. I felt like I did. You know, looking back, I think people within my community would have been very judgmental. But I didn't feel it or see it, and it made me feel better. I felt like I was with people who understood the way I felt, feeling different, feeling apart from, feeling maybe like they were treated differently. I don't think I knew all that consciously at the time, but looking back, I think that's what I found there. I don't remember my first drink. My parents threw parties my whole life. There was alcohol around my house my entire life. I drank young, whatever. But by 12, I'm drinking weekends, college, blackout drinker. I find cocaine in college, but I can't really afford it, so I actually try meth for a little while. But all of that, the cocaine and the meth we called it ice then. I think they still do, like in Europe. But all of that then was all the drugs throughout my story. All it was, and it was only ever uppers, was because it allowed me to drink the way I wanted to drink, right? Like, I am not a cocaine addict. I like the ritual of it. But when I found, and then I lost it, I couldn't afford it. I moved to Scotland for a year because my boss was Scottish, and I thought it would fix me to go live with his poor family outside of Glasgow. They don't drink in Scotland, so I thought that was definitely the best place to go to change my life. I'd been working, the Upper East Side wasn't cutting it. So I come back from Scotland, and this is, I've graduated from college. My father died in my last year of college. I graduated. I come back from Scotland. I'm still a mess. I threw myself down the stairs one day there just to get attention. I was melodramatic. Not a crier, just, a lot of I need attention. I did sort of fabulous until I was shit-faced. And then what I thought was fabulous was not fabulous. So I came back. I wanted to stop drinking. I stopped drinking for 4 years. I came to my first meeting here. I did nothing else, right? I complained. I got really angry with everybody in here. I thought you were all dumb and didn't know what you were talking about, and how could this possibly be a thing? And it was all because I was uncomfortable in my own skin. And my medication, alcohol, was gone. I didn't have the thing anymore that made it possible to live in the world, just of humans. I couldn't do it. So I would sit in my house and eat. And I got up to 260 pounds. You think I'm chubby now. I was 260 pounds wearing a size 22. And I'm not, look, that's fine. If that's where you want to be and you love where you're at and you love that body, you should. I did not. This was entirely made of binge eating to replace the alcohol. I was in no way, quote unquote, sober. I was replacing one thing with another. Did that for 4 years, went out, had a good old relapse. 3 full years out, more cocaine than you could ever imagine came in because I was going to drink. I stopped drinking during the week, and then I would drink Thursday nights because, Fridays don't matter anymore. Thursday's the new Friday, and that's probably changed now. This was 13 years ago. But I would essentially drink from Thursday to Saturday and then try to recover Sunday, and I would use the cocaine to keep me going. It was a lot. And again, just like in my past drinking, was a lot of dangerous situations I put myself into. I want to stop with that quickly just to say to anyone for whom this resonates, especially to women probably, that those situations where you have made a choice to drink or not a choice because you're dictated by alcohol and stay at the bar late or whatever it is, and someone abuses you, when I work with my sponsees, that is not on their 4th step. Because even though those decisions played a role in what happened, you are a victim, and that is okay. And it is okay to say that, and I never thought it was okay to say that. I grew up, you get back on the horse. My mom's Australian, I called her once in college after being raped, and she said, well, were you drinking? I hung up, and I never had a complaint again. I never said anything out loud again, right? It almost killed me. So I'm not saying leave it off your 4th step, but I'm saying it's okay to say you're a victim, and then it's okay to move forward from it, to feel it and to move forward from it, because I don't want to see you at 12 years where I was at 12 years wanting to kill myself because I'd pushed all of it down and said none of it mattered. I was a striver. Has sobriety been perfect? I mean, there's so much to my story, honestly. I could take the whole time here and just talk about myself. I do. I like it. I'm not gonna lie. I like talking about myself. You can ask Richard my husband, who is also known as the giant Japanese toddler, who while he's chairing this meeting, you will figure out why I call him that. But boy, do I like to talk about myself. So there's a lot more in that story. There's a lot of shame, actual shame, things that deserve shame. And then there are things that I think we feel ashamed of that aren't necessarily meant to feel ashamed of, that maybe it's something else. And that some women I've worked with, we've talked about, we hear in the book a lot about resentment. I didn't have resentment. I didn't give a shit. Like, I wasn't an angry person. That's not what was going on for me. What was going on for me was sadness, like the pain of every insult, of everything I remembered that was negative. I wasn't angry with those people. They hurt me. And I couldn't process it, so I shoved it away. I see him dipping around in his seat, so he's very Okay, so there's a lot, right? There's a lot in the story. There's a lot of choices I made that were, potentially deadly, and a lot of situations I chose to be in that were potentially deadly, and I got lucky. I'm an atheist, so I don't say it was a God wink or anything like that. And you can be an atheist and stay sober. And if that makes you angry, I'm sorry. Or no. You know what? I'm not sorry. This is an excellent pamphlet, whether or not you're a believer. I have no judgment for believers. But if you're a believer and you want to work with someone who's atheist, it's really good to talk to an atheist and get a feeling for them. And this is obviously another one where women talk about shame and so on that I think is really important. So sobriety, almost 13 years. I don't know. Math is not my strong suit. I work for a magazine. I got out of a lot of debt. I solved $500,000 worth of debt that I'd gotten into at the end of my drinking when I thought taking out a loan against the apartment my mother had purchased for me after my father died. I took out a big loan and I spent it on things like renting a small house in Southampton, and I don't know how to drive, so taking car services to and from, and they could only be Mercedes car services, because it was still that image. I'm 260 pounds. I'm $500,000 in debt, but I got to show y'all that I'm fine with the stuff and the cars and the bags and you can't believe what beautiful clothing you can buy at a size 22. Bags and shoes are especially good in that situation. So I got out of that debt. I got out of a lot of things. I worked hard to do it. I did do the work this time. I got a sponsor. Her name is currently Dale, though she is not my sponsor at the moment. She was tough, if you know her from the Upper East Side, fiery redhead, and she was tough. I did the work, whatever the work is. I think the work is step 12, going out into the world and being of service to your fellow humans, as well as being of service in here. I think the foundation is steps 1 through 11. AA is my foundation for life. It is not my life. It is the foundation on which the arch has been built, right, that I get to walk through every day. A free woman, free from addiction, right? Free from addiction. I walk through that every day. I live in the present now. I always did. I always lived in the present because God forbid you think about the future or the past when you're drinking. It's too much. This is a different present. I remember where I am and who I am and how to take care of me. But I can plan for the future and I can have dreams, which I never thought I'd have. So my life is not beyond my wildest dreams by any means, because I never dreamt I could have a life. And I have AA to thank for my life.